Tama was a weak loser knight who got clapped in battle for being weaker than Prime Sakura. However, he was reincarnated as an S-ranked monster and joined an elf with mega melons to clap anyone he wanted. It all started in a dark cave where he had just regained consciousness. After checking his stats, he realized that he had been reborn as a world-ending behemoth and thought the world would fear him until he checked his reflection and was shocked to see that he looked like an unearthed kitten. The next morning, a hot elf named Aria got her mega melons warmed up before getting dressed and heading out. Meanwhile, Tama was still staring at his reflection and couldn't believe that he was so puny until a slime showed up, thinking he would be a great snack. Using one of his skills, Tama turned it into pudding and took a quick bite, which gave him the slime's powers before he stored the rest in a pocket dimension. At the time, Aria had just gotten to a dungeon and was making her way in to slay monsters, while Tama was taking down as many as he could to steal their powers. After taking out the dungeon serpent, he kept looking for his next victim and found a treasure chest with a priceless gem inside. Unfortunately, it was a trap that transported him onto the back of an earth dragon that had been eagerly waiting for a fight and tried to smoke him on sight. He used a metal skill to keep himself protected from its attack, but the strike was too strong and left him bleeding out. Before it could finish him off, he managed to attack its eye and flew out through a hole in the cave, but his injuries were still too painful and caused him to pass out. Thankfully, Ariha was passing by at the time and saw him, so she took him back home, where he was surprised to see that such a hottie was taking care of him. Over the days that followed, he quickly got used to sleeping in her melons and stuffing his face with her milk, but that eventually gave him a strong desire to protect her. On her next trip to the dungeon, he snuck onto the boat and closely followed her in to keep her safe from any cultured predators that would try to have fun with her plot cannons. Just then, she saw 3 goblins and activated a high-speed skill to easily tear through them, while Tama watched in shock. The next moment, another goblin appeared, but it was a magic user and summoned a ball of fire to torch Aria, who didn't have enough time to escape. After pushing her out of the way, Tama attacked the goblin and sent it hurtling down a flight of stairs before getting his feline nuts rubbed on the way home by a very thankful Ariha. Before heading home, they stopped at the guild, where an ugly meathead adventurer named Kussman was waiting to ask Ariha if she was ready to join his party. He then tried to grab her cakes, but Tama immediately tried to bite his fingers off and almost clawed out his eyes. Pissed off by the fun-sized death machine, Kussman pulled out his sword to chop him in half, but it was held back by a bald, steroid-pumping drag queen named Arnold, who turned out to be the guild's receptionist and chased him off with a warning. Arnold then looked through the goblin ears Aria brought back and told her to expect a promotion before she went aside to give Tama's nuts another special rubdown. About an hour later, she had drowned herself in booze and was struggling to keep her cultured demons in check, so she went to wax her melons, and Tama deeply fought back the urge to pounce on them. When he started sneaking closer for a taste, she talked about a legendary elf named Alicia that saved her entire village and became the reason she worked so hard to get stronger. The next day, they stopped by the guild to meet Arnold, who immediately tried to make her leave before Kussman showed up with an order from the Baron stating that Tama had to be put down because of his attack the previous day. Ariha desperately begged for him to be spared, so Kussman offered to let her keep Tama as she agreed to a duel, with the terms that his victory would mean he gets to make her his wife. To save Tama, she agreed to it, so they met up that evening with most of the village gathered around to watch. Knowing that he was a rank higher than her, Kussman agreed to let anyone fight beside her, but the villagers were all a bunch of wussies, so Thomas stepped in to fight with her. Once Arnold started the fight, he charged in and Kussman tried to split him in half, but he dodged, and Ariha used the opportunity to activate her acceleration skill. Unfortunately, Kussman wasn't all bark and dodge before leaving a nasty bruise at her side. As Kussman kept attacking and overpowering her, Thomas struggled to decide if using his behemoth powers would end well for the both of them. When Kussman eventually knocked her swords away and charged in for the final slice, he activated his metal skill and shattered the sword before using wind magic to blow him away. Everyone was shocked to see that he could use magic, and he expected to be sent back to the afterlife because of how dangerous behemoths were, but they got excited, thinking he was just a special cat. After a night of celebration, he woke up in Aria's massive milkers the next day and accepted his new reality. Days later, they both decided to spend the morning in bed, snuggling up to each other, but things took a turn when Tama decided to check out her ear. The happy noises she began to make startled him, so he jumped off to escape, but she kept begging for more. Afterwards, she took him to see Vulcan, a hot demi-human blacksmith with biceps of steel, who immediately fell in love with how cute he looked. While he took a nap on her beefed-up melons, she asked Ariha why they stopped by, since her swords were still getting worked on. Ariha then asked if she could make something special for Tama, and Vulcan loved the idea. She immediately measured him up and started working on a sketch to make sure the armor wouldn't be too big for his baby paws. The next day, Ariha brought him back to try it on and couldn't get enough of how good it looked on him. Vulcan then said there was nothing more she could do to make the swords better and suggested forming a temporary party so she could watch Ariha use them up close. Later that day, she was in the dungeon, smashing goblins with her mallet, while Ariha and Tama watched and wished they had gotten a gym membership sooner. The next moment, a mage goblin tried to incinerate her, but the flames only charged up her iron fists, which she then used to blow out his spine. With the goblins cleared out, she told Ariha to focus on taking down a nasty orc who desperately wanted to take her milkers for a spin. Using her acceleration skill, she charged in for the attack, but it easily predicted her moves and tried to counter. Thankfully, Tama was close by and used his iron body skill to shatter its sword, giving Ariha an easy win that she definitely didn't like. Vulcan then told her that the sword's length was probably throwing her off, but Ariha was desperate for a fix, so she suggested fighting another special monster. Ariha got excited again, but immediately changed her mind after seeing the human-sized bacteria blobs known for forcing hotties to make creampies. Determined to get stronger, she charged in with both swords and tried using her acceleration skill to get closer, but their tentacles were too fast and knocked off one of her swords. Not ready to give up, she still charged in and was a lot faster this time, but it caught the sword and smashed it against a rock. Just then, Vulcan tossed her a smaller knife, and their light weight helped her gain enough speed to defeat the first one. For the second one, she blasted right through and took off its tentacles, but it then sprayed her milkers with special juices. While fighting back against its effects on her mind, she charged in for a second attack and sliced it in half. With both monsters defeated, Tama rushed over to steal its abilities with a bite. He then realized that Ariha was still pissed at the blob for almost making her reach the point of no return. After taking out her anger, she thanked Vulcan for the help and said she was looking forward to testing out the knives on other monsters. Before that, though, Vulcan took them to a special spot with a fountain that was mostly avoided by monsters because of the Philosopher's Stone kept there. One look at it gave Ariha flashbacks of a bloody war, but she eventually snapped out of it and removed her armor to take a bath. Tama desperately tried to look her way, but her G-cup milkers were impossible to ignore, and she told him to join them. Once inside the bath, she asked Vulcan about her previous party, and the steroid-pumping hottie immediately broke down in tears as she explained how they all left her to smash each other's cheeks. Remembering that, she told Ariha to be careful with Tama, as his kind was known to aggressively clap other species after growing to a certain point. Before Tama could process that information, Ariha grabbed him and said she was looking forward to it because she wanted his furry wand to be the first one in her box.
What do you mean by that?
Moments later, they got to a much deeper level and found a minotaur to test her improved skills. Using her speed, she landed a flurry of slashes, but they were too weak to penetrate its thick hide, so Vulcan attacked with her mallet to distract it. While Ariha kept slashing at incredible speeds, Tama tried to watch but couldn't take his eyes off her milkers until she cut out the minotaur's eyes. It frantically tried to smash everything close to its body and almost crushed Vulcan, but Tama jumped in to save her with his sonic scream. By then, Ariha had finally used an opening to take him down, and Tama got excited to see her win, while Vulcan started to realize why Ariha wanted his furry stick so badly. Afterwards, they stopped by the guild to get an appraisal from Arnold, who couldn't stop gushing about how proud he was of Ariha. Moments later, they got a table to eat, and Vulcan asked if they could make the temporary team up a permanent thing. But Ariha got shy because she had never started a party on her own. Realizing that girl logic would get them nowhere, Tama carried her hand over to make it official, and they drank to celebrate. Later that night, Tama woke up to their melons crushing him and thought it wasn't so bad until they started mumbling about the cultured dreams they were having of his magic stick.
Yeah, boy.
Days later, he and Ariha were looking for a spot to grab lunch in town when they saw two thugs beating up a civilian. When she asked if everything was okay, one of them recognized Tama and told his meathead partner before they both bolted. Ariha then checked on the girl they attacked and took her to the church, so she wouldn't be alone anymore. After that, Arnold congratulated her at the guild for getting to rank C, and she thanked them all for the help to improve her skills. Just then, she noticed the other adventurers discussing something and got curious, so Arnold told them about kidnappings being done by demons in the neighboring town. Hearing that the demons had no mercy for whoever they took made Aria pissed, so she asked Arnold for all the information she had about it. Vulcan then asked Aria if she was sure about facing demons with her kitchen knives, but Aria claimed to be ready for any battle to protect the people. Just as Arnold told them to expect help from a group of knights, a Sigma Chad named Cedric showed up to get acquainted. One look at his chiseled jawline took Tama back to a great war between humanity and demons that would have ended badly if not for the intervention of a powerful mage. Among the mage's strongest soldiers was Cedric, who then got close to greet the girls before Aria asked if their numbers would be large enough to defeat the demons. Just then, Arnold told her that he was actually a lot stronger than he looked and lost control over his senses, causing Aria to realize that Cedric was a sausage lover. The next morning, Aria picked Tama up so they could get going, but he realized that she was nervous and tried to cheer her up. To thank him, she pulled him close for a kiss that melted his feline brain cells, but he regained his focus for the mission ahead. Moments later, they were in a carriage with Cedric's party of misfits, and Aria quickly introduced herself to get acquainted, but the girls immediately fell in love with Tama. The next moment, he was on a new pair of milkers, getting cozy while Aria watched and felt a tingling sensation in her box. Right then, Cedric pulled over the carriage as they had run into a group of orcs, so Danny stepped out and sliced right through them in an instant. By nightfall, they got to the village and met with the chief, who then explained how all the adventurers they had sent into the ruins to fight off demons never came back. Hearing that reminded Aria of her tragic backstory again, so she waited until dinner to ask the others what led them to become knights. While they all admitted to doing it because their parents were either slaves or in debt, Cedric, whose father was a duke, said he joined because his decision to take brutal backshots meant he could not take over the family name. Afterwards, the girls all went to the dressing room to prepare for a bath, and Thomas saw melons of various kinds that he didn't even know existed. For some reason, Vulcan got embarrassed by his staring and ran off to enter the bath. After waxing their plot cannons while Tama's brain went into overdrive, they got into the bath, and Aria started complaining about how difficult it was to carry her monstrous milkers. The girls then massaged them and caused her to make happy noises until Danny got tired of listening and snuck out with Howard to see. Just as they were about to get a good look, Tama showed up and blasted them back into their bath. Several minutes later, they got to the ruins and didn't realize that a demon named Astaroth had been waiting to set the perfect trap. They had barely made it inside when a group of werewolves showed up to attack them. Howard immediately used a taunting skill to agitate them, and the others swiftly sliced through their thick fur like butter. Tired of being a spectator, Aria gave Tama the signal, so he equipped a new water skill and blasted right through the rest of the werewolves. Astaroth could already tell that he was more than an elemental cat, so he decided to bust out the big guns. Meanwhile, Aria had taken a break to rub Tama's belly and wished he could blast something else through her dripping hole. When they eventually made it to the deepest part of the ruins, Astaroth revealed himself with a bunch of A-rank trolls to finish them off. Cedric then told them to split up, but Astaroth had been hoping for that and used dark magic to separate Tama from Aria before sending out the trolls. Tama first ripped one off their arms, but it quickly regenerated, so he focused on evading while thinking of a way to defeat them. Cedric, on the other hand, had been itching for an actual challenge and charged up his sword with dark magic before tearing through their midsections and canceling the regeneration. By then, Tama had been backed into a corner and knew he could win by equipping a new form, but that would also mean being feared and separated from Aria, so he used fireballs to burn them faster than they could regenerate. Astaroth then tried to understand Cedric's power, but Aria and Vulcan kept him busy, so he kept dodging their attacks until Vulcan kicked up enough dust to distract him. Aria then stabbed into his heart and released a special power that overpowered him, but he quickly sliced her arm before collapsing. After Aria also fell, Tama tried to figure out what happened, and Astaroth kept saying something about a great power returning until he turned to ash. Seeing how fast the poison was spreading, Cedric claimed it was from a poison dragon, so they quickly rushed her back into town to get treatment. Unfortunately, the local physician said it was too late, as the only thing that could stop it was the eye of an earth dragon. The girls then suggested hunting one down, but Cedric said it would be too late by the time they managed to find one, so the doctor decided to administer some painkillers to make her death painless. Determined to save her, Tama flew off and went back to the dungeon at the city to find the earth dragon that almost clapped him. She was excited to finally finish him off, and he knew his current form would be too weak to defeat her. Accepting that he might never get to be with Aria again, he switched to a much stronger form and attacked. Comment Elf Milkers if you want a part 2, and don't forget to subscribe if you liked the video and would like to see more recaps like this.